Dear friends, we have done this presentation for you so that you may have a glimpse of who we are and our charism in the church. Here we have the two most important hinges of our Carmelite charism. The first, the Lord lives in whose sight I stand. This portrays the contemplative aspect of the Carmelite vocation. And the second, the apostolic aspect. Our roots go back to the early church, where many desired to live a hermit life in the desert. They were inspired by the biblical concept of the desert as a place of encounter with God. They dedicated themselves to Our Lady, their Queen, Mother, and Patroness, to be their companion in this quest. Saint Teresa, foundress of the discalced Carmelites, asked the Lord how this little community of nuns could help stop the fire that was raging the church at her time. She thought of these original hermits on Mount Carmel and looked for a way to live the desert ideal in the midst of a city. Her genius was to make possible for her nuns a more contemplative lifestyle. She did this by a harmonious blending of the hermit style of life and communal life. For Saint Teresa, the enclosure was to be the chief means by which this desert environment could come alive once more in the contemplative ideal of Carmel. In this environment, solitude and silence could be maintained, and a life of deep prayer and friendship with Christ flourish for the sake of the Church. Freely chosen, the enclosed life of Carmel brings about a radical freedom of heart, which enables each nun to give herself totally to God. She wanted very much the communal aspect as well blended in, because she was convinced that the depth of our relationship with one another in community would portray the depth of our relationship with Christ. So, practically, what is the life in Carmel? What is our daily schedule? Our main reason for being in Carmel is to grow in intimacy with Christ. The main part of our day, therefore, is taken up with these means.
The Lord be with you.
And with your spirit.
Bow down for the blessing.
The daily Eucharistic celebration. The Eucharist is the source and summit of the life of the Church. God blesses us with the presence of our Carmelite friars who faithfully come to celebrate with us. We are grateful too to have the sacrament of reconciliation every 2 weeks. We have 2 hours of mental prayer every day, 1 hour in the morning and 1 hour in the evening. Teresa reveals this practice to be truly essential for us, as it is the special time and space given each day to the Lord. Listen to what she says. For mental prayer, in my opinion, is nothing else than an intimate sharing between friends. It means taking time frequently to be alone with Him, who we know loves us. the full recitation of the hours. This is paced out during the day with Lord's or morning prayer at 6 a.m. and we end at night with Compline at 9:15 p.m. This is what the Church has to say. The Church entrusts the full liturgy of the hours to all contemplative orders as it is prayed on behalf of the whole Church. This is from Vatican II. Coming to the communitarian aspect, Saint Teresa taught a community lifestyle which is that of a small family in which all are evangelically equal, relations are openly sincere, joys and sorrows are shared, and the members are committed to one another as sisters for their entire lives. She says in her constitutions, all must be friends, all must love one another, all must be cherished, and all must help one another to create a joyful atmosphere. She was convinced that when this mutual love is put into practice, it is a proof of the authenticity of their life of prayer. As you can see, we do have time for hobbies, singing practices, and we have recreation twice a day, morning and evening. Carmel resembles the simple life of Nazareth and the daily household tasks as well as those that support and maintain the nuns. Saint Teresa laid great emphasis on all working for the support of the monastery and on keeping everything in great order and cleanliness. Aside from the practical necessity of those who are poor earning their bread, she recognized the balancing and liberating effects of manual work and desired this for her nuns as work has an affinity with discipline, simplicity, and humility. Saint Teresa is convinced that those working with their hands have a balance and stability that is healthy for mind and body as well as spirit. Some of our garden fruits, when they are plentiful, we sell. We do have a variety of fruit trees and vegetables in our garden, as you can see. The problem sometimes is that the birds and squirrels get to them first. We have great fun preparing for and celebrating festivities. On Christmas Eve, it is a tradition in Carmel to make cribs in every place of work. Why is this? Each crib is made with great love for all those who do not welcome Christ into their hearts, those who do not have room for the Christ child to be born in their hearts. So, there are many cribs around the monastery, and usually we go caroling after Christmas Mass before each crib. Chinese New Year. We celebrate Chinese New Year elaborately with our Chinese sisters. Red, of course, is the dominating color all around the monastery. Jubilees and some solemnities like Christmas, Easter, feasts of our foundresses, professions, Chinese New Year, feast of our prioresses and others are celebrated with decorations, feasting, talking, and great joy. Saint Teresa wanted it this way so that the sisters could return with much fervor into the silence again after these days. Over the centuries, the experience of the contemplative sisters, centered on the Lord as their first and only love, has brought forth abundant fruits of holiness and mission. They enlarge the Church by their hidden apostolic fruitfulness. This is taken from Perfecte Caritatis number 7. Saint Teresa wanted a small group of enclosed sisters who would be good friends of the Lord by striving to follow the evangelical counsels as closely as possible and living a life of prayer for preachers and theologians, the defenders of the Church. Thus, a life in service of the Church, in service of Christ. That is from the Way of Perfection. Saint Therese of Lisieux says, "Let us be apostles. Let us save especially the souls of priests. And on the last day, Jesus will be grateful. We shall give him souls." We come now to the summing up of our Carmelite charism. Intimacy with Christ, the contemplative dimension. The Lord lives, in whose sight I stand. Love calls for love in return. Let us keep this always before our eyes. Saint Teresa asks her daughters to keep their eyes on the crucified one, and everything will become easy. Then we have the apostolic dimension. With zeal have I been zealous for the Lord God of hosts. And here Saint Teresa says, "I would give 1,000 lives in order to help one soul." We do hope that God will call some of you to our way of life in Carmel. You are most welcome, of course, to contact us by email or otherwise. Our sisters wish you a closer walk with Jesus each day. Our next 2 slides give you an idea of what Carmel in Seremban looks like from the outside and inside the enclosure. Bye!